of sickness. Let's make them feel better. The Generation Euro program presenting our podcast about racism.
Hello and welcome to the I'm Not Racist But podcast. Today we will see how racism is at the core of our societies. From the Let's Take Action project, we have decided to take action to build the European reality we want to be involved in. Everybody has values, goals and expectations, and we chose this moment to make them a little bit more real. We believe that awareness is the key to any change. Knowing about your reality is the first step to get involved on it and change it. Therefore, we have digged into the European reality and found out the topic we wanted to use as the beginning of the change, and it is racism. We understand it as a source of hate and discrimination based on the origins. Then, as mentioned before, the first step to confront it is awareness. Do we know the real meaning and multiple manifestations of racism? Are we aware about its presence on our own daily life? Do we exactly know what we are targeting? We want to discover which ambiguities or confusions are making it more difficult to clearly identify and start to solve a problem that constantly affects our society. We also want to discover if the difference between cultures always have to be perceived as a potential source of discrimination or hierarchy. With the objective of answering these questions, we have created a quiz. It has been answered by young people from 9 different countries that had talked about their perception of racism and its manifestation in their own countries. Now I'm going to explain the answers of the 4 questions we have included in our quiz in order to put some light on this topic. So let's go. The first question was, have you used or heard someone use any phrase that might be considered offensive towards some group of people? The answers were, I have heard a lot of times this one. Immigrants don't deserve public health, social insurance, etc. Or they have to take the boat and go back to their country. Many of them have heard a lot this one. Why do the people from Africa smell bad? Or they are less intelligent than white people and they came here to do nothing. There is also a phrase in Spain that is N-word de mierda, which means shit N-word. We hear a lot that he is working like a Chinese man when we want to say that he is working a lot and for free or very low wages, was also one of the answers. It continues, the Arabs are thieves and the Muslims are terrorists. Or, don't trust him, he's a gypsy. Let's note here that most of our answers came from countries with an important migration background, and still somehow some opinions seems like they haven't changed at all since 100 years ago. Seems weird, doesn't it? We continue with the most famous phrase of our times. I'm not racist, but here are the answers. I would never let my daughter engaged to a foreigner. Or, I would not like my daughter to marry a black guy. I'm not racist, but refugees can't keep coming to our country and create all of this riot in our land. I'm not racist, but they have to stay in their country and face the war and not come here to take our jobs. I'm not racist, but the immigrants should be the ones that work in the fields, not us. I'm not racist, but it's always the blacks, Arabs, causing something bad. I'm not racist, but Arabs can be quite violent and uneducated. I'm not racist, but I just don't trust Muslims and Arabs. But wait, there are also things that we can all see, touch and eat that are kind of racist. What do I mean? Let's take a look. There is some food with racist names, so we asked the people to give us some examples concerning their countries. In Greece, there is a dessert made of black chocolate that is called Little N-word. In Italy, they also have some chocolates called N-word. In France, they had a pastry that was called N-word's head because it was made of chocolate and coconut. This name is now forbidden, but there's also this chocolate powder called banania with a black man used for a kind of muse. In France, there's also some kind of brioche called petit chinois, which means little Chinese. Let's explain something here. Many people today don't know the origin of this specific name, but it turns out the original name of the sweet was in Chinese, and it was too hard for a French person to pronounce, so they simplified it to Little Chinese. This is a great example of how easily the stories and the origins might get confused. In Spain, there are the conguitos made of chocolate with a black mascot as a logo. But this year, a campaign has been launched against its political incorrectness, with the growing support for the Black Lives Matter movement. In Germany also, there is a food called Zigeunerschnitzel, which means gypsy schnitzel. But there also are some international food products like Uncle Ben's or Aunt Jemima. They both have changed their logo now. Jemima has even changed its name. But back in the day, in the USA, black people could not be referred to as Mr. or Mrs., but uncle or aunt only, because according to some people, blacks didn't or still don't deserve equal rights and respect as white people. All of this seems possible to change if people decide to create a better world for everyone. Seems like a good idea, right? Maybe it's not so easy. Hundreds or even thousands of years ago, our societies were and worked differently than the ones we have today, but still the same harsh, rude, and even offensive traditions keep on living. Is it because we don't understand, or we don't want to understand? Let's take a look at some examples of those racist traditions. Here are the answers that we got. People of the same gender who want to live together have no access to the official religion's procedures, like marriage, baptize a child, even a religious funeral. Another answer goes, not only in my country, but there are a lot of police brutality around the world and against non-white people. Italy is a secular country by constitution. However, we use Catholic symbols everywhere. I guess this is deeply offensive towards people who are atheists or who profess a different religion. Another answer is the burning of Judas, back in the day where people tied it with the Jews. Also, another answer is Santa Claus, one white man with hundreds of black persons dressed in traditional slave clothing. There were also a lot of answers concerning blackface. Someone said there is a big festival in Belgium and probably Netherlands too, where people do black faces. Also in Dunkirk, there was a carnival during which participants were dressed as black people and thus painted their faces in black. There is also apparently a controversy around the topic of the three wise men, Los Tres Reyes Magos. A white man paints himself black to perform on Christmas instead of hiring a black person to play that role. So, this is it for all the answers that we have received. And so from this questionnaire, we have been able to obtain a really revealing image of the youth and its perception of awareness about the topic. But we realized that there was a kind of confusion around racism, and so the main problem that we identified is that any kind of discrimination is sometimes misunderstood as racism. Therefore, we have found sexist sentences or homophobic ones being described as racist. This can be a problem when planifying an action. Then some of the answers consider the simple fact of notifying a difference between cultures as a hate action that can lead to discrimination. But now let's move to a more pleasant part. We see that indeed people are aware of a sort of hate coming from the origin in every country, which targets different groups depending on the reality of each country. People have been able to identify small issues from their daily life that can be highly insulting for some communities. Nevertheless, the cancellation of the differences hasn't been mentioned as the solution of racism. Here is an example so you can understand it better. Some of our participants defended that dressing up with traditional clothes from other countries can be offensive for the referred culture. But why? Is there any hate behind the fact of dressing up? No, there is ignorance. The correct way of doing it is valorizing the importance that those clothes you are wearing have in their country of origin. They are not only clothes to customize yourself on special occasions, they represent a cultural identity, and this is really important. Therefore, hate is not the only way of discrimination in racism. Ignorance is also a way to offend, and this is the point we need to highlight. We need the difference between cultures in order to achieve richness, and we need to be aware of them to valorize them, to be able to identify whenever pointing out difference can be a sort of discrimination, as little as it might seem. We therefore confirm what we mentioned in the introduction at the beginning of the podcast. Awareness is the best way to give the right value to everything and everybody. We hope you enjoyed this action and that you can find some inspiration on it in order to build your quality reality in which there is a place and curiosity for everybody. Thank you for listening, have a great day and stay tuned for the other episodes.